What happens when cartoons cross the line, so far over it that entire countries slam the brakes and shout, "Not here"? Think animated films are safe, harmless, or just for kids? Think again. Some movies managed to spark outrage so intense they got blacklisted from screens across the globe. Which movie do you think went too far? Was it racy rabbits, banned superheroes, or a Pixar flick about puberty? Brace yourself. We're diving into the animated movies that stirred up chaos, got banned, and left the world gasping. Song of the South, 1946. Let's kick things off with a film so radioactive, Disney pretends it never existed. Song of the South isn't just controversial, it's legendary for all the wrong reasons. Picture this, 1946, America's Deep South. Disney launches a live-action animation hybrid full of singing critters, sunny fields, and a character named Uncle Remus with a grin as wide as the Mason-Dixon line. But beneath the cheerful tunes and animated bluebirds, there's a story that's been called one of Hollywood's most glaring blind spots. The plot follows a young white boy who visits his grandmother's Georgia plantation after his parents split. Uncle Remus, a kindly black sharecropper, regales him with fables of Brower Rabbit and Briar Fox, blending catchy animation with old Southern charm. But that charm is what detonated a firestorm. The film sugarcoats plantation life, making it seem downright idyllic, and presents black characters as subservient, happy-go-lucky folks with golly gee dialects. Zip-a-dee-doo-dah may be catchy, but critics and civil rights groups quickly saw past the sing-alongs. Outrage erupted. The NAACP slammed the film for perpetuating dangerously glorified stereotypes. Even in the 1940s, reviewers bristled at its depiction of race relations. Disney tried to dodge the bullets, insisting the story was just folklore, but protests only grew louder. The result? Song of the South was never given a full release in many countries, never issued on home video in the United States, and remains locked away, probably somewhere underneath Cinderella's castle, gathering cobwebs. Disney won't touch it with a 10-foot pole today. Even their famous Splash Mountain ride, once based on the film, got a full makeover to wipe out the connection. Song of the South didn't just get banned. It became the Voldemort of Disney's vault, the movie that must not be named. And if you ever wondered why you can't stream it, now you know. It was too controversial for even the Mouse House to handle. Persepolis 2007. Next up, a film that got banned for telling the truth and had governments panicking over the power of cartoons. Persepolis is an animated memoir like no other, based on Marjane Satrapi's best-selling graphic novel about her turbulent childhood in post-revolutionary Iran. This isn't talking animals or magical kingdoms. It's black and white animation packed with rebellion, oppression, and razor-sharp honesty. The story follows Marjane, a bold and outspoken girl who grows up during the Islamic Revolution. She witnesses her family's world get turned upside down. As strict theocratic rule takes over, war breaks out, and freedoms vanish overnight. Through Satrapi's distinctive art, the movie tackles everything the Iranian regime hates: punk rock, political dissent, women's rights, and the raw reality of state brutality. In one unforgettable sequence, young Marjane buys a bootleg Iron Maiden cassette, risking arrest just to feel free for a few minutes. Governments weren't amused. Iran slapped a ban on the film instantly, branding it anti-Islamic and an attack on the state's values. Even outside Iran, Persepolis rattled censors. In Lebanon, the movie was yanked from theaters after protests from Shiite clerics. The reason? It's an unapologetic portrayal of the Islamic regime's violence, executions, and religious hypocrisy. For many, the film became a symbol of resistance, a forbidden art that gave a voice to the silenced. Ironically, the bans only made Persepolis more powerful. Underground screenings popped up across the Middle East. The film won raves at Cannes and an Oscar nomination, sparking debates about censorship, history, and the right to tell your story. For Marjane Satrapi, the controversy was personal and proof that animation isn't just for kids. Sometimes a cartoon can hit harder than any blockbuster drama. If you're ever tempted to dismiss animation as lightweight, remember Persepolis. Its ban is a badge of honor and a warning to anyone who underestimates the power of speaking the truth, one pencil stroke at a time. Fritz the Cat, 1972. Ready for a total tonal whiplash? Enter Fritz the Cat, the first animated film to ever score an X rating and the only cartoon that could make even seasoned censors blush. Based on the underground comics by Robert Crumb, Fritz the Cat pounced onto the scene in 1972, determined to break every rule in the book. And it did, with a wink, a snarl, and zero apologies. Forget talking mice with clean morals. Fritz is a slacker, a schemer, and a world-class troublemaker prowling the psychedelic streets of New York City. He seduces, brawls, drops acid, and stumbles through orgies with a cast of wild animal characters, each one standing in for a different part of the American counterculture. Think hippies, Black Panthers here as crows, cops, and even Nazi bikers. Subtle? Not a chance. The movie's relentless, no-holds-barred satire skewered everything: race, sex, politics, and police brutality. That made it a magnet for bans. Norway, Malaysia, and several other countries refused to let Fritz run wild on their screens. The X rating kept it out of countless theaters in the US and UK, and Australia outright banned it for decades. Why all the fuss? Take your pick. Explicit sex scenes, animated but graphic, rampant drug use, and racial caricatures that went so far over the line, even its defenders squirmed. But Fritz the Cat wasn't just shock for shock's sake. It was a subversive mirror held up to American hypocrisy, using animation to poke fun at everything the grown-ups wanted to sweep under the rug. The bans, the protests, the pearl clutching? They only made Fritz more infamous. The movie grossed millions and turned adult animation from a punchline into a legitimate genre. Today, Fritz the Cat is both a cult classic and a time capsule of the wildest, weirdest corner of the 1970s. Love it or hate it, one thing's for sure: Fritz proved cartoons could be dangerous, dirty, and, when the censors show up, impossible to ignore. South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, 1999. How do you get banned in half the world and still become a blockbuster? Easy. Just ask the South Park crew. When Trey Parker and Matt Stone unleashed Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, they didn't just aim to offend. They set out to torch every taboo, cross every line, and make censors wish they'd never heard of animated musicals. The movie starts with Canada declaring war on the U.S. because their kids picked up a few bad words from a cartoon. That's just the warm-up. The film goes on to lampoon censorship, religion, race, sexuality, war, and just about every celebrity who's ever set foot in Hollywood. Oh, and did we mention Satan is dating Saddam Hussein? Yeah, that happens. If you thought the show was edgy, the movie cranks the dial to 11. There are 399 swear words, a musical number called Uncle Faur, and scenes so outrageous that even the Motion Picture Association of America tried to slap it with an NC-17. The producers responded by making it even filthier until they got the R rating they wanted. As for international censors, forget it. Kuwait, Iraq, and Bahrain banned the movie outright for blasphemy and offending public morals. Several other countries demanded heavy edits or just refused to screen it at all. Ironically, the movie's core message is about the absurdity of censorship itself. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut isn't just a parade of potty humor, though it's definitely that. It's a sharp, satirical jab at the kind of people who try to decide what everyone else can watch. And as if to prove the point, the movie became a massive hit, earning over $80 million and picking up an Oscar nomination for Best Song. In the end, Parker and Stone proved that controversy can be a box office goldmine, and that sometimes the only way to fight the censors is to make them the punchline. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. Time for a gut punch. Few animated films have ever hit audiences with as much emotional force or faced as many barriers as Studio Ghibli's haunting masterpiece, Grave of the Fireflies. Forget magical cats or cuddly spirits. This 1988 classic dives straight into the nightmare of World War II, following two siblings, Seita and Setsuko, as they try to survive the firebombed ruins of Kobe, Japan. There's no sugarcoating here. Hunger, disease, and the indifference of adults all take center stage, and the result is devastating. The film's artistry is undeniable, but its message? That's where things get volatile. Grave of the Fireflies paints a brutally honest portrait of Japan's suffering without demonizing the Allies or glossing over the horrors of war. For some, that's what makes it a work of art. For others, especially censors in China, South Korea, and even certain Japanese school boards, it's dangerously sympathetic. In China, the film was banned for years over concerns it humanized the Japanese side of World War II, a period still loaded with historical trauma and resentment. In Korea, screenings faced fierce protests and occasional bans for similar reasons. It's not just the politics that caused a stir. Grave of the Fireflies is so emotionally shattering that some critics called it inappropriate for children, and some censors took that literally, limiting its broadcast or slapping it with harsh age restrictions. The story is relentless. As Seita and Setsuko's hopes fade, so does the light of the Fireflies, in scenes that will haunt you long after the credits roll. Yet despite the bans, Grave of the Fireflies found a global audience and earned legendary status among cinephiles. Today, it's hailed as one of the most powerful anti-war films ever made, animated or otherwise. And if you're still under the illusion that cartoons are just kid stuff, sit through this movie. Then try not to cry or question why anyone would ever try to erase its message. Sausage Party, 2016. It's hard to imagine a CGI comedy about talking groceries would get banned. Unless, of course, you've seen Sausage Party. This isn't your average trip down the grocery aisle. Think supermarket products with existential dread, an orgy scene that defies imagination, and more four-letter words than your last online gaming session. Seth Rogen and company aim to blow up every boundary of animation, and boy, did they succeed. From the opening song, it's clear Sausage Party is not for kids. The film follows Frank, a hot dog sausage who discovers the horrifying truth. Instead of going to a culinary paradise, food gets eaten, ripped, sliced, chewed, and digested in gory, hilarious detail. But that's just the tip of the iceberg lettuce. The movie is packed with crude humor, religious satire, sexual innuendo, and stereotypes that gleefully mock every ethnicity, gender, and faith on the shelf. Censors worldwide practically choked. Russia banned Sausage Party outright, refusing to let it screen due to offensive and inappropriate content. India followed suit, appalled by the sexual jokes and religious parodies. Middle Eastern countries lined up, citing blasphemy and indecency. Even in the U.S., the film's marketing campaign sparked outrage. Posters featuring suggestive hot dogs and Bun's raised eyebrows, and some theaters accidentally screened it to children, $1 million worldwide, earning critical acclaim for pushing boundaries and sending censors into panic mode. For Seth Rogen, the bans were almost a badge of honor. "If you're offending the right people, you're doing something right," he quipped. At the end of the day, Sausage Party proved that animation isn't just a playground for children. Sometimes it's a battlefield for free speech, artistic expression, and, yes, food-based debauchery. You'll never look at your next barbecue the same way, and you might just appreciate the subversive power of a well-timed fart joke. Shujo Tsubaki/Madori, 1992. If you think you've seen disturbing animation, brace yourself. Shujo Tsubaki, a.k.a. Madori, the controversy to a whole new level. This underground Japanese film is so shocking, it's been banned, censored, or shunned in nearly every country that's come into contact with it, including its homeland. And no, this isn't about political satire or crass humor. This is horror, depravity, and the darkest corners of the human experience, rendered in hand-painted cells. based on a 1930s manga, Shujo Tsubaki follows Madori, a young orphan girl lured into a grotesque traveling freak show after losing her parents. What follows is a relentless barrage of abuse, violence, and exploitation. The film is infamous for scenes of sexual assault, mutilation, and psychological torture. There's no comic relief, no happily ever after, just a spiral into misery that leaves even seasoned horror fans shaken. Japanese authorities freaked out. Madori was pulled from most theaters within days of release and was never given a mainstream home video distribution. In Tokyo, it was labeled injurious to public morals, making it almost impossible to screen legally. Overseas, the reaction was no less severe. Australia, Norway, and several other countries refused to grant it a classification, effectively banning it. Even in the underground festival and social outcasts, the film's defenders argue that it shines a spotlight on the ugliness the world prefers to ignore, forcing viewers to confront pain, cruelty, and isolation. Detractors, meanwhile, call it nothing but exploitation. Either way, nobody walks away unmoved. Shujo Tsubaki isn't just controversial, it's radioactive. If you ever find yourself watching it, know you're peering into one of the darkest, most forbidden corners of animation. Whether you see it as art or an atrocity, one thing's for sure, this film's ban was no accident. It was a warning. Turning Red 2022. Who would have guessed that a Pixar film could get caught in a global culture war? Turning Red, directed by Domi Shi, unleashed a storm of controversy the moment it dropped on Disney+. It's a crime? Daring to show puberty, menstruation, mood swings, and all from the perspective of a 13-year-old Chinese-Canadian girl. For some, it was a groundbreaking representation. For others, it was a red flag waving in the face of tradition. The story follows Mei Li, a straight-A student who transforms into a giant red panda whenever her emotions run wild. A clear metaphor for adolescence and all its awkward glory. But instead of softening the subject, the film leans in. Mei's mom talks openly about periods, buying pads, and navigating the chaos of growing up. There are crushes, defiance, pop concerts, and family conflict galore. Conservative audiences and censors did not take kindly to this. China banned the film outright, citing cultural insensitivity and negative influences on youth. Middle Eastern countries, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman, refused to screen it, claiming it promoted non-traditional family values and was too blunt about puberty. Even in North America, parents and pundits clashed over whether the film was too much for children. But here's the thing. For millions of viewers, Turning Red was a breath of fresh air. Kids saw themselves represented honestly, while parents finally had a tool to start tough conversations. For every government that banned it, there were fans streaming, sharing, and celebrating the film's candor. Critics praised its humor, heart, and willingness to break taboos. The controversy only fueled curiosity, making Turning Red one of the year's most talked-about films. In the end, Pixar did what Pixar does best, used animation to make us laugh, cry, and squirm a little. The bans? They just proved that honest stories, especially about growing up, still have the power to shake up the world. The Simpsons Movie, 2007. When The Simpsons Movie hit theaters in 2007, you'd think Springfield's favorite family had already offended every group on Earth. But if there's one thing the Yellow Clan excels at, it's pushing boundaries nobody else dares to touch. This time, they didn't just spark headlines, they got flat-out banned in entire countries. What was the tipping point? For Myanmar, it was the film's irreverent depiction of Buddha and its use of yellow, a color closely tied to Buddhist monks and national identity. The government was so offended by the animation's supposed mockery, they not only banned the movie, but also any merchandise featuring the characters. In Venezuela, the film was yanked from cinemas for being unsuitable for children and contrary to national values. Other countries, especially in the Middle East, demanded heavy edits to religious references, same-sex jokes, and the infamous scene where Bart skateboards naked through town. But the bands weren't just about faith or national pride. The Simpsons Movie lampooned environmental disasters, government incompetence, and celebrity culture with its trademark bite. For countries used to tightly controlled media, that was a little too close to home. Meanwhile, fans and critics couldn't get enough. The film smashed box office records, earned raves for its sharp writing, and cemented The Simpsons' status as the world's most controversial animated family. Of course, for Matt Groening and the gang, outrage was always part of the plan. The Simpsons has built its empire by making everyone uncomfortable, then making them laugh about it. The movie just turned the dial up to 11, leaving censors sputtering and audiences begging for more. In the end, The Simpsons Movie proved that even after decades on air, there's no topic too sacred for Springfield to poke fun at. If you ever wondered whether animation can spark real-life bands, just ask Homer. Doe. So, next time someone tells you cartoons are just kid stuff, you'll know better. These movies prove that animation can shake up governments, outrage censors, and turn the world upside down, sometimes with just a single frame. Did any of these shock you, or did we miss a band favorite that deserves its own moment in the hot seat? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe for more wild movie history, and share this with your bravest friends. The world of animation? Never as innocent as it seems.